nice if someone said, try this way first.
Okay, we are starting. Welcome everyone, and starting from saying our names so we know each other.
Julia, Maureen,
Dean, George,
Mandy,
Tony,
Adrian,
Jane,
Sally.
And there we go.
Good to see you all. It's been a while since we've had the, what do you call it?
Gathering.
Yeah.
Satsang meeting.
face
Yeah.
to face.
Yeah. Well, the spiel's still the same. We don't teach you anything here, and we don't tell you anything. What we do is point toward and ask you to look to where we're pointing to see for yourself. Because no matter what you might believe or think, nobody can ever teach you anything, or nobody can tell you anything. Not about what we're pointing to, anyway. Because what we point to is what they call in the traditions, the scriptures, is non-duality, Advaita. It's a Hindu tradition, Advaita meaning non-duality. And they try to describe non-duality by saying it's one without a second, not two. It's only the one essence, patterning, shaping, forming, experiencing and expressing as everything. That's why they'll say in a lot of the traditions, the Lord thy God is one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one God. There is nothing other. And the Muslims will say there's no God but God, Allah is his name. Christians say it's omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. And all the different traditions have different names for the one essence. Hindus have thousands of names for God. Ganesha, Shakti, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahman, all talking about the same thing. One without a second, not two. So when you look at it from that direction, it's not my God or your God or his God or her God. If you like to use that term God, it is the one God, patterning, shaping, forming and expressing as everything. And all of us sitting here are pattern, shapes and forms, just like the room is a shape and a form, and the trees and the flowers and everything else. It's all the one essence. It's never changed its true nature. It's never been separate or apart or divided. It's still only the one. They call it a higher power, but there's no higher power or lower power. It's again the one power. And the Vakya, the great mantra, is I am that. And so everyone sitting here who puts the label on yourself of the I, you are that already. So what's the point of trying to become something that you already are? You can see why it's impossible. But we've taken on this belief that we are separate. But there's absolutely no separation whatsoever. It's the one essence, patterning, shaping, forming, expressing, as appearing as everything. So there is only the one reality, and you must already be that. And it displays, expresses in all the different ways. But it's never left its one nature, one essence. So we've taken on the belief We are this separate entity. We are this person. And where does that word person come from? Comes from the ancient Latin language, I think it was, meaning persona, the mask. So we've got this mask of concepts we've put on ourselves. I am Bob, the Australian, the good fella or not so good. All concepts, words or thoughts. How many words were you born with? And you realise you weren't born with any words at all. That's why you can't really remember your birth. Because you had no words, you couldn't discriminate it without the word. And the word's not the thing. Take the word fire, can you cook with it? Can you burn yourself with it? Can you heat yourself with the word? The word water, can you quench your thirst with it? Can you swim in it? So this word I or me is not what you really are. Another term for it, I call it intelligence energy. I don't use the term God because you can get confused with that term. Purely and simply we all come from different traditions. Some of you might be Christians, some of you might be atheists, some of you might be agnostic, some of you might be the Hebrews or the Jews or the Muslims or whatever other religion you've taken, put your beliefs in. But they're all words, labels we put on.
I have a quick question. Are you hearing Bob all right, or should we stop the air conditioner maybe? You hearing okay? Cool.
Is that seat free just over there?
Yes, yes,
Across
yeah,
the
absolutely.
water?
Yeah. Come closer,
Oh,
you
yeah,
sit
right,
better,
yeah.
yes.
How you doing?
I'll
Yeah,
pay up
and-
later.
How you doing?
I'm good.
And maybe you speak up a little bit also.
I could hear him all right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we can hear.
no, it's
Everyone can
fine,
hear.
fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Good to-
So that's another thing we say, that what needs to happen is need to investigate and see for yourself whether you are this so-called separate entity, this individual, this person, or, as they say, it's the one reality, the one essence, patterning, shaping, forming, and expressing as everything. That needs to be seen and recognised. And they call it a cognizing emptiness. The Buddha called it a cognizing emptiness. We think that we are cognising the emptiness. But it's not that at all. It is that emptiness that's doing the cognising. Another term for cognising is knowing. And the Buddha made the statement there and then that emptiness is form. And the form is nothing but the emptiness. So it's all this emptiness that's doing the cognising, the knowing, and the pattern, shapes and forms are that cognising emptiness. So you must be that already and ever. Take the word person. Hey, how you doing? And we've seemingly separated ourselves. Now the sense of separation is isolation.
In Insecurity.
Insecurity. Vulnerability. So you can understand where all the fear, the anxiety, the stress, the guilt, the shame, remorse comes about from. Purely and simply because we've isolated ourselves, separated ourselves from the totality. And that sense of separation comes insecurity. And with that insecurity, what are we doing? We don't like to be insecure. So we're trying to become whole and complete. And you see, that's an impossibility. If we understand and recognise what we're pointing out there, that it's the one essence that's patterning, shaping, forming, experiencing it as everything, and that is all there is. So they explain it in Hinduism, as they call it, Sat, Chit and Nanda, are the terms for it, for the 5 factors of it. Now the 2 factors are Nama Rupa. Sat is existence, Chit is consciousness, Ananda is loving to be or being, and the Nama Rupa are the body-mind, the name and form. They say that name and form are Maya, illusion. Appearance. But that needs to be recognised. That this body we think is you or me or I, we call it I, is just the Nama Rupa, the name we put on it, Bob, the Australian, and the form is this body, mind. A Maya, their illusion, not as they appear to be. And the problem is, when we've learnt words, all of us have taken on that idea that we are this separate entity, this individual. But when you look into it, investigate it, you see it's not so. You believe you are this body-mind, are you the body? Well, innately you know that already, that you're not the body, because don't you say my body? The same you say my house, my car, my coat, my hat. You know, not the house, the car, the coat, or the hat. So, investigate, have a look. Who is this me or my, what I'm calling my body? Who does that belong to? And we think that it belongs to me, myself. And don't they tell you in the scriptures there is only one self, one Atman, not the many, but the one. But now you've said, say myself, you've separated yourself from the totality. And then that insecurity and vulnerability that comes about with that separation. What's the body made up of? If you believe it's separate, have a look at it, question it, investigate. Because that's the thing we say, that the false cannot stand up to investigation. And the definition of reality is that which never changes. That body, mind that we believe ourselves to be, is constantly and ever changing. But what is the essence of it? I'll have a look at what's the body made up of. And you realise the body's made up of air, earth, fire, water, space, just like the elements around you. Try and separate yourself from those elements if you can. Stop reading. See how long you'd last without the air. Stop taking water. How long would you last without the water? Get off the earth if you can. You can't separate yourself from the earth. Get out of space if you can. You can't separate yourself from the space. The body temperature, the heat, die and separate yourself from that. They've gone through the water and the air and the other things. So when you look at it, you're not separate from any of these things at all. Hey. And what are all those elements? Can't they be broken down to subatomic particles? Into pure energy? So it's this one intelligence, energy. That's the term I use for it. I don't use the term God because you can get confused with that term because we come from different traditions and you've got different labels of what you believe this God to be. So intelligence, energy is just another label also. That's not it. But I think it's a good pointer towards it because I'm not pointing to some conceptual image or idea we've got that we've taken to be real. But intelligence, energy, intelligence is knowing. There's not one of you in here that's not knowing right now. The knowing is an activity. Any activity is a movement. And any movement is a vibration. And a vibration is just a movement of energy. So the body, pure intelligence, energy, we're broken down into subatomic particles. The mind, the thoughts, the vibrations, be broken down into concepts, ideas, images, or energy. So where is the room for a person, a separate entity to come into it? If it's not separate at all, it's all the one. So we need to live, or as the livingness is happening through us right now, the intelligence energy. Anyone who's not breathing right now? Anyone who's not, heart's not beating? Anyone who's not digesting the food, replacing cells in your body? Is the person itself doing that? Or is it what we call the life that's animating, patterning, shaping through that pattern? Is it the life itself that's doing it all? We'll have a look at that. You say, I breathe. My heart's beating, my hair and fingernails are growing. Thoughts are coming up, feelings are coming up. All these things are coming up. Who to? This conceptual image that I believe myself to be me. But if that life itself is not in the body, how many breaths can a corpse take? What can it say? What can it think? What can it do? What can it feel? It can't do any of those things without the life. Now, isn't that what Christ told you a couple of 1,000 years ago? He said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. People thought he was talking about himself. He wasn't. He was talking about that sense of presence, that life essence that's functioning through the body. That's the way to go. That's the truth. That's the life of you, that pure being. And being is not becoming. You call yourself a human being. You believe in this God, you call God the Supreme Being. What happens if you take away the label human and take away the label supreme? Try and separate the beingness without putting the label on it. So wouldn't you, if you recognise that, wouldn't you realise, well, I am this pure being, without putting any concepts or words on it? Because try and negate the beingness. Can you say, I am not? You can't. The knowing that I am is there. So that's the pure knowing. So you're being right now, and you're knowing right now, and you're happy to be right now, aren't you? So that's the Satchitananda. You are already that. What do you need to look for it for? But we think we are this human being, we're going to become something. And what does becoming imply? Doesn't it imply a future time? And when you look at time, what can you say about time? Is there such a thing? We believe in the past and the future, but what happens if you don't think about it? Is there a past if you don't think about it? Is there a future if you don't think about it? You'll say, oh, I was in the past. All right, well try and live yesterday. Try and live 5 minutes ago. You realise you can't live in the past. Try and live in the future. Try and live do what you're going to do when you leave here. Do it right now. So you can't live in the past, you can't live in the future. So it's always this ever-fresh, timeless, ever-fresh presence awareness. And presence means right in this immediacy. And anyone who is not aware right now, no, you realise you're aware, so you're already that. And we've taken this conceptual image on and living from that point of view, see how that functions. Something comes up in your mind, in the thinking, and you like it. Now, you don't want the good things to go. We want always being the good things, not realising that this manifestation, being a vibration of energy, is constantly vibrating in the opposites. And the words we've learnt and picked up along the way, see how they're functioning too, and realise they're always functioning in the opposites. Watch your mind and see how it functions. See what it's saying. It's either good or bad, it's past or future, pleasant, painful, happy, sad, loving, hating, positive, negative. It's always functioning in the interrelated opposites. But we don't realise that it's transient. All this manifestation is spontaneous, it's transient, it's constantly changing. But we think it has some time-bound essence about it, but it's not, it's spontaneous. When does now begin? It's got no duration, so it's not time-bound because you say it's beginning right now. And as you're saying that, it's already ending. Hey. So this thing that comes up that I like it, not realising it's going to change, no matter how much you love it, how much you want to keep them there, and the things around you. Everything is changing. That body of yours is changing right now. You mightn't realise it, but right in this instance, there's thousands of cells dying right at this moment and being replaced. So this thing we like, it's going to change. We don't want it to go. So what do? We try to keep it there. In the trying to keep it there, we're resisting it from going. And realise that any resistance you are in is conflict. So now you're in conflict with life itself, because you don't like the way it's going, or is it? So we're resisting it. And any conflict makes you uneasy. It makes you anxious, fearful, depressed, jealous, envy, guilty, and all the rest of it. So there's resistance, conflict, and disease going on. All the time. Something comes up, and we don't like this one. Oh, I shouldn't be thinking this, or this is no good. We don't want it. So what do? We do the same thing. We resist it. Again, conflict and disease. And in that resistance, conflict, disease comes the fear, the anxiety, the stress, the guilt, all the psychological suffering comes upon us. That's uneasiness or dis-ease. So, where's it all happening? In this mind. And we say, my mind. Is there such a thing? We'll have a look and see. Show me your mind. Grasp a thing or hang on to a thing you're calling my mind. Is there anything solid and substantial there you can say this is mind? And if there was mind, and you believe you are the mind, you'd be frightened of losing it, wouldn't you? Don't you gladly give it up every night when you go to sleep? It's not there, unless you start to dream and cause other things. So what's mind? When you've investigated, you see mind is nothing but thought. And what's thought? Thought's word or sound. And what's sound? Sound's a vibration. What's a vibration? A movement of energy. So like the manifestation out there is all a vibrating pattern of energy, and the body's a vibrating pattern of energy. That's all it is. The world as we know it is constantly vibrating and changing. So where does that leave you? It must leave you as this presence awareness. Pure being, pure knowing, pure loving to be. Nisargadatta calls it, have an affectionate awareness of being. In other words, be warm towards yourself. Don't be dirty on yourself because you don't like this or that. Be warm, be affectionate towards yourself. Or that's the loving to be. And if that recognising is going on, what room is there for being unhappy, fearful, anxious, jealous or envious? If you know that that self is the one self that's expressing and patterning, shaping and forming and appearing as everything through everything, that everything in this room is already that. Even the room itself and the space in the room. It's all that. And each pattern, shape and form is that. But we try to find the answer in the mind. We've learnt words and believed in the words, taken the words to be real, and put this conceptual label on ourselves. I'm Bob, the Australian, the good fella, or not so good, or I'm unhappy, or I'm fearful, self-pity, or jealous, or envious. All concepts or labels we're putting on. And see that the word's not the real. And if you went into a department store and bought a dress or a shirt or a pair of pants or something and came out with the label, you wouldn't be too happy about it, would you? So the word's not the thing. But you are the life itself. And that's a word trying to describe something that's going on right now. Livingness, beingness, knowingness, existing, conscious, aware, all happening right now. Recognise that, settle into that, and keep reminding yourself that you are that. And that is the absolute. What can you add to the absolute? Nothing. What can you take away from it? Nothing. So, nothing to be added to it, nothing to be taken away from it. Everything must be that already. Or, as they say in Buddhism, they call it the great perfection. What can you add to the perfect? It's another word the same as the absolute, meaning absolutely everything. You can't add anything to it, or you can't take anything away from it. And in Buddhism they give it here in one sentence. The great perfection is non-conceptual awareness. Nobody's unaware right now, you are aware. But there are all sorts of concepts going on probably right now. You're thinking this and thinking that. But it's non-conceptual. Without any concepts on, pause a thought and ask you what's wrong with right now. Ask yourself what's wrong with right now, if I don't think about it. What can you say without a thought? You must realise that if there's no thought going on, I've got to put a thought on it then to say, well, I'm here, I'm being. But there's that knowing of that without putting the words on it. Words can be very useful, and they are very useful. But because they vibrate in the opposites, they're self-destructive. Because it's that same word that tells me I'm not good enough, I'm fearful, or I'm unhappy, I'm depressed. Without the word, everything is just as it is. What is means unaltered, unmodified, uncorrected. No preference, no partiality, no comparison. Sit with that for a moment and see, realise that the words come up of themselves. What's your next thought going to be? Well, you realise you can't tell me what your next thought's going to be, but a thought will come up. And then we'll say, well, I think. I'm thinking this thought. Well, what's the I am? Isn't it the sense of presence that's expressed through the mind as the thought I am? So that I am is not the person, it is a sense of presence. A sense is a sensation or a feeling. It's a feeling of being here right now, presently. And you're not unaware. There's awareness of presence there. So they say, one of the sayings is let it rest in its uncontrived singularity. It's a singularity. It's only the one in cosmos. Just relax or rest in it, abide in it. Abide as that essence. And it's always happening, but unnoticed, unrecognised. Recognize. It's a cognizing emptiness. Let it continue to happen by recognizing it, reminding yourself. As it tells you in the scriptures, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. How would you renew your mind? Just remind yourself, I'm already that. I'm not this miserable body or pattern that's unhappy or fearful or anxious. I can display and appear and seem to be that, if I like, if I enjoy the suffering. But the psychological suffering is not necessary at all. It can be done without. We don't like to lose this or see this go or somebody pass away or things like that. But where are they all gone? Where can they go to? Can you postulate or think of anything that could be outside of this space? Or outside of the awareness at all? You can't. And that's what needs to happen. And some of you already know it, because you recognise it, and every one of you have had glimpses of it throughout your life. There have been moments when everything's fallen into place, and you said, well, how did that happen? But then you forget about it. You don't, instead of looking for it, you look back into the mind. We think we'll work it out in the mind. But you'll never ever find the answer in the mind, because the mind is time. And if you're looking for something in the mind, you're looking for something in the future or past. It's spontaneously happening right here, right now. And you are already that. You can recall, you can't live in the past, but you recall past moments. And the only actuality you're giving them is recalling it right now, because you can't tell me what you thought of a minute ago now unless you recall it. It's gone. So, the thinking's happening and you say, I think. What have you done when you say, I think? You've formed a subject, a thinker. And then they say that I am the thinker. But as soon as you say, I am, or I think, you formed a subject, a thinker. That thinker wasn't formed until the thought, I think. The thinking is happening spontaneously. And then you say, I think this thought. So now, me, the thinker, the subject, has the thought, I think, which has become the object. Then what have you done? You've seemingly split the thinking into subject-object duality. But can there be a thinker, a subject, without thinking? And you realise there can't be a thinker without thinking. And there can't be the thought without thinking. So you must realise from that the thinker and the thought, subject, object, are not the thinking. The thinking is the axial, but it's divided up into subject, object, thinker and thought with words. I think. And the same thing is happening with the seeing. You're seeing right now, but your eye's not telling you I see. The seeing is happening through the eyes, but the eye's not saying I see. The thought comes up and translates it as I see. And that thought that's translating into this conceptual image, me, thinks it now has this, has the capacity of seeing. But it hasn't. The life essence that's breathing you, beating your heart, growing your hair in your fingernails, digesting your food, has enabled the seeing, the thinking, the feeling, the tasting, the touching, the smelling to happen. all this happening is going on naturally, not with the person. So have a look along those lines. Question, or got any doubts or arguments? So, anyway, got any questions? Don't hesitate to ask them. Got any doubts or arguments? Don't hesitate to bring them up. Give us your version of it, whatever you can. But get into it. If you want to add something to it, Kat, for a start off, you can.
I was just wondering, we have a few more people here. Should we run the names again so you know who everyone is? And everyone knows everyone? Just, we have James here. You just say your names. James.
Hello, I'm James.
Sally again.
Jane. Mukti.
Mukti, Adrian.
Estelle.
Tony.
Kylie. Mandy.
George.
Julia.
Carolyn.
Oh, welcome again. Yes, welcome again, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you for everything, for the little donations that landed up in Bob's jar. That really, really helps with his supplements, because on the pension that's just unaffordable, and we want to have that brain working and the knees also. But and thank you everyone who is with us who couldn't come, especially Taz and Heyman. They sending their love. And we have over 30 people watching us online. So welcome everyone. And yes, that's the time when we interact. We ask questions if anything was unclear, what Bob was saying, or maybe was triggering, or maybe was landing really well, and you would like to add something or clarify something. Just we open it up now. Let's see if we have no questions from the group out there. We have over 30 people and no questions. It's unusual. That is our portable mic. Oopsie. Oh, now we have few. Okay, go on.
What's the most common question that you get from people?
That's a cheap question.
I got the common answer. Who wants to know?
And we have a couple of things coming. You think what you're going to ask, and I'll read the one. There is one from John David. Love you, Bob and Kat. Love to all my extended family watching wherever you are. That's from America. Amarnath, good morning, greetings. Oh yeah, we wanted questions. Thank you, Amarnath. And dear Bob, can you speak on desires, please?
Desire. Well, there's many different views on desire, and Nisargadatta puts it quite simply. He says, desire is the fixation of the mind on an idea. And he says, get it out of its groove by denying it attention.
Beautiful.
By denying what?
Attention.
By denying it attention.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Now we have one from Tanya. And thought is always claiming, commenting. It's some spelling error, sorry. But everything happens without thought. Thought is not needed for the functioning. Yeah? We could say that there's such a things like, depends on the definition of thought. Some people consider action impulse to be a thought. But then we would have to say that animals are thinking. But in a way that we usually consider thoughts is just a narrative, the commentary. So yes, absolutely, Tanya. The functioning happens as it happens in every other creature in the universe. But we humans, we have the chatter that comments on what's happening. And that commenting is totally not only the source of all suffering, because it judges, it labels, this is good, this is bad, I want this, I don't want that, and all the misery comes from it, but it's also just a time waster, because it grabs the attention, and now I don't see the birds singing, I can't smell the roses, because the whole attention is trapped in that self-entertainment, in that chatter. So totally, you got it. Thought is not needed for the functioning, Tanya says. And now we got Rohan. Thought is part of the functioning. And that's also true. It is part of functioning because everything is part of the nature. So yes, we humans are designed in a way that we do have that default mode network, and we do translate everything as relevant to the survival of this body-mind. It is part of the functioning, but it is also a source of suffering. So it is a part of functioning. Capacity to question thinking is also part of functioning. And that's what we invite everyone to do. Just question that narrative and see that this is only a pattern of chatter. And with that, you're free. Because you don't have to believe the thinking. You can just see it as the traffic noise or the bird singing. It's not me, it's not mine, it's not about me, because there is no me. If you look inside, see if you can find it in me that the chatter or commentary is relevant to. You won't. Nobody ever has. If you do, good luck. Tell us about it.
Shakespeare says, 400 years ago, nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. The Sangha puts it another way. He says, nothing can trouble you excepting your own imagination. Break that word imagination down to imagine. And realise that's all we're doing. We're creating conceptual or mental images, taking them to be real and believing them to be real. And that's what troubles us, what we imagine or think about this or that or the other. And it's the very thinking or imaging in. Look in the mirror, what do you see in the mirror? Reflections or images. You can't say they're not there. But go up to the mirror and try and grab a reflection out of it. You can't grab it. So you can't say it is, you can't say it isn't. And that's the same with all this manifestation. You can't say it is, you can't say it isn't. You can't put any set point on it, static point whatsoever on it. It's constantly transient, changing.
Now we have another...
I was going to say, I think you made a simple statement that mind is time.
Yeah.
It's a very simple but profound pointer, isn't it? Like, mind is simply time, so it's like, it just shuts that whole thing down in a way. Yeah. It's great. It was more a comment.
I wonder what that was. For me, I can almost see the thought, whether it's past or present. But what about when you can be swamped with a feeling, and the feeling encapsulates your whole, not the whole being, but part of the being. So more about when, and the feeling was started by a thought, yet you can be, or I can be consumed by a feeling, and that can really overtake me. And then I can look at it, not just rationalise that it started by a thought, because that's all conceptual, but yet that feeling can still encase me, consume me. How does one actually, other than just sit there and say, release, that's again with the words, but embrace it with the vibration as well so it can be free?
Thought, feeling and emotion are one and the same thing, different aspects. First of all, there'll be the thought there. Then with that thought will come up a sensation or a feeling. And then when that feeling or sensation has been there a little while, it'll become the emotional. Then it's got to the emotional stage, it's stirring the body up. So it's all thought-based. Thought's very subtle. Then the feeling or is a sensation or a feeling. And we put the... And we put the label on the sensation. We'll say this is anger or this is fear. How do you know? Well, your parents, when you were a little child, told you you're angry or you're fearful. And from then on, we've reinforced it in the belief that sensation, instead of seeing it's fresh and new, we put the old label on it. This is anger, this is fear, and then we're in conflict with it. We try to fight it or get rid of it or add it to it or whatever, in conflict with it. But see, see it as a fresh and new sensation. The sensation, the feeling, see it fresh and new without putting the old label on. And you might see it in a totally different light. But when we put the old label on it, this is fear, or this is anger, this is stress, or this is whatever label, we're living from the past again, not with the fresh and new, what's going on right now. But see that sensation or feeling as a fresh and new. The same analogy applies in space. Like three aspects of steam, water and ice. Three different aspects of it, like thought, feeling and emotion. Three different aspects of the one movement of energy. First of all, we water vapour, which is steam. Then it condenses, it becomes water. And then the water can become cooled down and become ice. So that's the same thing with thought, feeling and emotion. We call it spirit and matter. So we've divided the two when it's the one essence. See, spirit, when it becomes consolidated with thought and feeling, it becomes material, seemingly matter. But spirit is the essence. And it's all one. It's only looking for the spiritual. It's all spirit. It's all essence. Appearing, patterning, shaping, forming, and appearing to be solid and substantial. But it's not. So recognise that and see whatever the feeling is, instead of putting the old label on it, see it fresh and new. And
Instead of resisting it. Instead of being resisted, like Steve.
Last night I was on the phone with a friend of mine processing, discussing something that had stirred me, right? And there's a tendency in this pattern to go, well, who gives a crap? Oh, sorry. There's a tendency to go, oh, there's no one here to feel anything. And she's like, just stop and be with the sensation. Just stay with that, but non-judgmentally and gently present with just what the feeling is, without going into the thoughts, the stories, need to fix it, see who cares, all that stuff. That's another way. Oh yeah, find out if you can find the one who's upset is a great way to see past it. But also it also helps to embrace your current experience gently. Treat it like it's a little baby crying for your love. And you just say, yeah, it's okay. And you give it some presence and some gentleness. And when you stay with it, it just moves on in that presence that it's given. But when we try to ignore it, avoid it, run away from it, push it down, judge it, in a way you're resisting it. And it persists when we go, well, I shouldn't feel angry about this because... or I shouldn't, and we should on ourselves. That's another way to keep it present. I don't know if that helps, but it helped me last night.
I think Jane had a pretty good answer because Jane is a performer, and you said you were. Can you tell us about it? It was a really good answer when you were saying that when you gather your energy for the performance, you can call it anxiety, or you can just
Or you can just see it's the energy you need to do the performance in my case. So instead of naming it anxiety or nervousness or whatever, it's just the energy gathering. And it's the same as, if there's a sad feeling present, and the tears come, it's an opportunity to watch. It's an opportunity to watch and acknowledge that and just move on without naming, watching without naming. Bob used to have a fantastic thing. He would say, go outside and just walk along the street, watching without naming. And it's the same with watching what's coming up, watching how it dissipates, watching how it just passes on like everything. All things must pass, including me, because I have to go now. Lovely to see you all. I've got to go to a family thing. So great to have the group back. Love you all. See you.
See you.
Bye.
Oi.
Oh,
Got it.
oh.
Okay, we got it.
Bye, darling. Love you.
Enjoy the family.
Yeah, thank you. I will. Bye.
Press something wrong here. Yeah, we have 40 people with us right now, and I can't actually turn the camera. So, okay, Bob, would you like to add more on this one, on thoughts, feelings, emotions?
Just as Julia said earlier when she started off that, stop and see. Stop. And as you stop, have you stopped seeing? So the stop, the seeing's still happening, but the narrative's not going on, the story.
Okay, got it. Another aspect is, of course, just seeing how every vibration in the nature is really the same one essence, and in the body it will be reflected in the body, as perhaps depends on the feeling. When we call it, of course, when there is a bubbling life here, and let's say there is a little bit of a contraction, a little bit of a tension, I can call it anger, or I can call it anxiety, and then the story comes. Then the mind will find evidence. Oh, this is why, because of environment, boss, my husband, whatever. Will justify the label. But really, when we take the label out of the picture and we take the justifying story out of the picture, this is life, bubbling through the body. It has a center, maybe in the heart, maybe in the gut, maybe in the skin. Maybe it has a lot of reflections in the body as a sensation. And pure sensation doesn't have any flavor. It's not good or bad, pleasant or painful. It may be uncomfortable at times, of course, when we run short of breath or something. But discomfort is not bad as per se, because discomfort can be the adrenaline rush which make you fight or flight, which assures survival. So just instead of conceptualizing the raw energy, we go back to that basic appearance of the energy as a vibration. We are out of the mind. We are back into the presence, because sensations are always present. This is what is happening. And this is what is not happening. This is imagination. Calling it anything or justifying it with anything, not only it keeps the feeling, it prolongs it, it doesn't let it go, move like a cloud. But it also takes us away from that deliciousness of present experience as it is. I found that even anger, when I take the label off and I just delight in that movement of fury, just how energetic. It's not ugly anymore, it's not bad anymore. It's definitely not saintly, like people like to imagine that once you see through the illusion of self, there's no one there that is pulling the strings or running the show, you straight away become saint and you can't bite anymore and you can't bark anymore. But look out in nature. Dogs are no saints. they bark and they bite. So it is, of course, the reasons for barking and biting, they may go away, because what humans do, they self-medicate sense of lack. I'm not good enough, I'm small, I'm ugly, and now I have to fix it. I have to add to myself, so I have to steal from you, or I have to compare myself with you, so I have to make you worse. And then, of course, I feel guilty because it doesn't feel right. So all that conceptualizing of feelings that are really to self-medicate sense of lack of illusory self, because there is no self there that is not enough, that is small or is ugly. There's nothing there. It's just a feeling, but that feeling, when you again look at without a label, it's a passing phenomena. It won't stay, it will go. It may be here for a moment, and you may find a story why or what, but if you don't go to the head, you just see it gone. And if it doesn't go, you delight in it, because it's just the movement of life, just like the weather. Bob has all sorts of feelings too. All the feelings, not just loving feeling, pleasurable feeling, blissful feelings. But you know, when I serve him something rotten, he won't eat it. He will. I won't. I won't.
Bob, can you link the sensations in the body and so on to the sense of attraction or repulsion? You're kind of, because you often say that you're either attracted or you're repelled, that's the word, yeah. And so that's also still a sensory experience, but that's one that you talk about with more
With babies?
credibility in a way, or more sort of like, I can't think of the words, it's enough.
Yeah, when you talk, Bob, about little children who don't have an ego and they either attracted or repelled, that's how the nature works. Natural.
Yeah. What was it again?
When you relate the thought, feeling and emotion to attraction and being attracted or repelled, the natural movement towards or away.
Yeah.
So it's not that all sensation is just like some neurotic kind of like response, but there is some response which is nature's response to a person, a place or a thing. And I've heard you talk before about your own experience with that has given you that sense of which you trust within the core of you.
It's just a natural response. Just the same as your heart's expanding and contracting. Your air's going in and out and all the rest of it. So that's the way the functioning goes on. If there wasn't one side of it, could there be the other? Could there be day without night or silence without sound? Is that what you're getting at?
That's a nice summary. What Tanya was saying, the thoughts are the source of suffering, and Rohan brought up that they are part of functioning.
Yeah.
They're narrating of what is the natural, what you are just saying, what is a natural attraction. Like, yes, Bob wouldn't eat certain food, would eat another, just like the cats. Natural attraction.
What are you singulating Bob out of it for?
You are just the best example.
Example. It's the same functioning.
Yes, the same functioning.
All
Yeah,
over.
you wouldn't eat certain food and would eat the other.
But the important thing is, though, that we'll never find the answer in the mind. That's when we learnt words, and that sense of separation came upon us. We've been functioning from that ever since, and our schools, society, and everybody else points in that direction. And doesn't really say that it won't find the answer in the mind. That's what they tell us. They say you'll never ever get peace of mind. And you won't, because the mind can never be at peace. What we call the mind is constantly vibrating. It's a vibrating movement of energy. And they describe that they call it the peace that passes all understanding. It can't be understood or grasped with a concept, with the mind. But the peace is when the mind is not. When the stop, just stopping for a moment, or even as you're out breath. If you breathe out a thought let your thought ride out on the breath. When that breath goes out and the thought goes out with it, what's there before you take the next breath? Isn't there a little subtle gap there? Well, recognise that, it'll grow bigger and bigger. Like the good analogy is like the clouds blocking the sun. You go out the cloud. Outside on a cloudy day, would you say the sun's not in the sky? No, you know damn well the sun's in the sky. The sun has never left the sky. You've investigated that and seen for yourself. But then you ask yourself, well, what forms the cloud? Well, the cloud itself doesn't know. The sun itself forms a cloud. The sun doesn't know anything about the cloud. It's the nature of the sun to shine. And in that self-shining, the radiance of the sun, what's it do? It evaporates water. The water rises and cools down a bit and forms a cloud. Now that cloud seemingly obscured the sun. But what happens? The sun continues to shine, and it'll bring that cloud, cool it down, bring it down as rain. Then the rain will cool and become ice. So it's changed from a simple thought, functioning thought, to that seemingly solid emotion. And all the sun does is continue to shine. Now in that radiance of the sun again, which evaporates water, it also causes a wind to blow or cool it down, and the cloud will dissolve and blow away. And what's there? Naturally, without the cloud in the sky, it's much more clarity there. It's clear, it's empty, it's warmth, it's radiant with the heat of the sun. And it's the same with us. When there's less thoughts here, and emotion and feelings, like the emotion has become the thought, has advanced into the emotion from the subtle thought. Well, none of those clouds are stitched onto the sky. They're not attached there. They're free to move. Have a look in your head and see if there's any thoughts fixed in your head. And if there's no thought in your head, they come and they go. But we fixate on some and cling to them. But again, comes in with the breath, goes out with the breath, the thoughts and the words. What do you do when you breathe in? Don't you inspire? There's another word for it. And what's inspiration? That's when you get all the good ideas or the good thoughts or the good feelings that come from that. All the knowledge and that there comes in through that inspiration. So the same principle here as what's going on in nature, because it's all the one life, the one essence. The cloud doesn't know anything about the sun, and the sun doesn't know anything about the cloud. Darkness doesn't know anything about light, light doesn't know anything about darkness. All the darkness is the absence of light, all that light is the absence of darkness. But all these seemingly dualistic things are the one essence still, and only and ever.
Go on, Jay.
So what about thoughts such as, when we can get caught up in a dream, sometimes it can be pleasant. So what about like there's certain meditative techniques where we visualize a future that we would intend to have, or what about or we visualize like the chakras in our body? What about consciously using thoughts to create more pleasantness? What are your thoughts on that?
It'll be the life that is the consciousness. It'll enable those thoughts to come around.
Yes.
It's all, everything is that.
So allow it to happen organically.
Yeah.
So if you are moved, in other words, if you are moved to do some sort of practices, recognize that being moved, that thought or idea to visualize or align chakras, it comes from consciousness, not from the individual self or ego, which is just a phantom.
And consciousness is life.
Yeah. Bob
Or
has the
awareness.
beautiful one-liner, give credit where credit is due. Just give credit to the consciousness. You are moved to do something, save the world, write the book. That's the consciousness that give you the inspiration or idea, the one essence, not the imagined self that doesn't have any power. And then if you are moved to do something ugly, that's also the pattern that consciousness has formed. Just like Bob was saying, I love that analogy. The sun, which is the radiance, which is the clarity, which is the life essence, it evaporates water and creates clouds. So that very same life essence creates the bad habits, the addictions, the self-hatred, the ego. All those clouds are also the way that one life manifests. Everything is that one. It's nothing that is not it. And the capacity to recognize it is also that one. Yes. I think Jesus had a quote also in the Bible that recognize the Lord in all thy ways. Turn the stone, and that's it. Everywhere, really, if it is only one, it's nothing that's not it. And even thinking, because we had someone commenting here, I think it was, it was also Tanya, that the true thought is part of the functioning, but is often untrue. And Julia was saying that this truth comes and goes. The personal ego mind takes over, able to observe, but how does one settle into the seeing? Would you like to answer that, darling? Truth comes and goes. Can truth come and go? How to settle? When the ego takes over, that's seemingly, it feels like the ego had the experience and the ego lost the experience. But the ego didn't have the experience. Experience is there when the ego stops for a moment.
Ego is a fiction.
That's right.
And that whole saying is,
know the truth.
he goes when I go.
Anyway, would you like to answer how to settle into this seeing?
Well, try and stop seeing. Seeing is happening.
Yes.
Cognizing, another word for seeing. Cognizing, it's emptiness that's seeing. It's emptiness that's forming. Form is nothing but the emptiness.
Yeah, we have a couple of interesting questions from Rosa. What propels the field of action or field of whimsy to reveal itself? In other words, beyond personal choice or directions.
The same thing that's running everything. Life, if you call it life.
Yep.
Without life, what can anything do or be?
Yeah, again, give credit where credit is due. It's always the same one, forming, shaping, patterning as different whims or motivation or inspiration or thoughts or actions or feelings or objects, forms, clouds, oceans, airs, all of it. Infinite field of potentiality. And then we have the brain that interprets things as colors and shapes and forms. And we have Amarnath. Thought is always around body or limited ego. Without thinker, thoughts can be there, like burnt rope. All thoughts related to 5 elements or senses. Good insight, isn't it? Can anyone think about anything else than the body, mind, and the world? Thoughts always apply to objects, sensory objects, or they always about something or the other. Go on, Julia. Vision.
I'm waiting. Cool. So I was thinking about just kind of on 2 of your pointers. one of them being thought, feeling, and emotion being one and the same, and the other being the false cannot stand up to investigation. Okay? So a feeling is false because a thought is false. They're both existing. Like, well, they're coming and going. They don't stay. I guess the truth doesn't change, right? So I saw a thought, any word that we have, even anger, is a judgment. A label is a judgment. And I once, I guess recently, I saw that anger, that it was arising. And again, there was a judgment happening. This shouldn't be. This should not be. That word "should" is like a good, I think, probably the dirtiest word in the English language. We have like lots of others, but we're all saying shit. It's a bad word, but that word "should" is, to me, a really good pointer when to remind myself that I'm thinking something or someone should show up in some other way, and I'm in my thoughts. And when I investigate that, and I could, I don't know, it just kind of brings attention to the fact that I'm in my thoughts when I notice this shoulding. And
Big way to suffering.
it is. It is, and including the shooting of the labeling of anger, or whatever. But I don't know. I just felt like kind of bringing that up. That I think when I wondered, like, for example, I guess I noticed that when I was judging something or a situation or something like that, there was this shoulding happening, and when I noticed the shoulding, there was also a noticing of, just really a belief that something should be other than what is, and I really don't think anything can be. So I was buying into an idea that, and I think it's false. When I look at it, that anything could come out any differently. I mean, the fact that we're sitting next to each other in the same room, like all the things that had to line up that we couldn't have planned for this to be. It's just not possible that anything could be other than what is. And maybe I'm going in my head too much, but that's I'm not doing that either. So.
No, of course that's obvious. Yes, things are as they are. If you want to argue with reality, or if you want to believe that you know better than the nature or God, then good luck with that. It hurts.
Similar question. Yeah.
Oh, cool. I'll just put the mic on this one. Let's see. I'll give you this one.
Let Dean hold it.
Oh yes, cool.
Sorry. So I was just wondering about abiding in presence. Like, I find that I can't abide in presence throughout the day when I'm talking to people or stuff like this. Like, is it realistic to be abiding in presence? Like, during even conversation, as soon as I start talking to someone, I'm lost in a sort of conversation in my head. And so how do you, what's the what would you say is the best way to go about that?
Yeah. Wait. We'll get the mic. Okay. Off you go.
While you were just asking that question, were you unaware at any part of it? You weren't unaware, so you must have been aware. And you say, we not recognise the focus was what the chatter that's going on in the head, but realise that life isn't still behind it all. You couldn't have opened your mouth without that life. Hmm?
He wasn't aware of being aware.
Awareness was there, but there was
But who is the I
Yes, that's it.
who wants to be aware?
See? But awareness was there. Awareness was there, but wasn't you.
Yeah.
But personal you. So you are the awareness.
It kind of feels there is this notion in spirituality, which is a beautiful, helpful practice, and if people are moved to do it, wonderful, is the mindfulness. And that's the practice which says that your mind should be where your hands are, or your mind should be with every activity. So now, if you are aware of the presence, your mind should be aware of the presence. And we expect that the mind will always be aware or awake, or the mind will always be it has something to do with the expectations of the ego, the mind, or the I, to be aware of what's going on. But the awareness is there before the mind comes to be aware, and after the mind disappears in the thinking. The awareness is prerequisite of anything to even happen. And you are that awareness. You are that space in which mind is with your hands, you're mindful, or you're not mindful. With the mind is dreaming away, or the mind is focused on five senses, or the mind is, or there is a certain amount of attention acknowledging the emptiness, or the presence, or the aliveness of being. Regardless of that activity, of that distribution of attention, you are that life essence, the open space, open field of consciousness. It's just that when the whole attention is spent in the thinking, then of course that kind of gets obscured. All that thoughts cloud the sky. And I know you're asking about how to have that sky clear and unobscured. But then again, it is the one who wants to have clear and unobscured is the fictitious entity, is the mind. It can't happen. The mind can only feed on, the mind, the thoughts are where the actions are. Mindful, that's as good as it gets for the mind. That's not self-realization or no self-realization. The fact that there is no singular entity inside that keeps the attention focused anywhere is the truth, regardless of realization or not. But that fictitious entity cannot realize that, because that fictitious entity doesn't have the capacity. The thought doesn't think. It is just a vibration. And the I is just a thought that can't think. And now that I thought wants to realize something or stay in something or be in the state, it's just a thought. It's present or absent. It doesn't see, it doesn't have an eyes, ears, nothing. So unfortunately, that realization of that open field of emptiness is available all the time. It's never really obscured, but it's totally inaccessible for the thought, because the thought is noise. How can noise know silence? What is beyond the noise and silence is obviously appearing in that open field.
Where does noise arise from?
Silence, absolutely.
Yeah.
Noise arises from silence. So even the ego, even the thinking, even the obscuration, even the desire for clarity is all just a passing cloud in consciousness. If you see it this way, oh, I want to be clear all the time. Oh, I don't want to. Oh, I get it. Oh, I don't get it. All of this is just passing phenomena. All of this is just what shows up and goes away. Content of space. But space is never touched by any of it, and you are that space. So you just watch all of it as a movie without attaching to any of it. Even if it has intense sense of I, the identification, this is me, this is important, this is serious. Even that is just a passing moment with that intensity. Yummy.
Fixed point of no fixed,
No fixed center.
no fixed center.
Yeah.
So, what's it like to think while being? What's it like to have the thoughts appear as patterns and not be a thinker in your experience?
just a
Ah, yeah, okay.
Sorry, do you
What
wanna
it's
ask that
like to,
again?
yes, okay.
So
What it's like to have the thoughts.
What's it like to have thoughts appear upon you rather than be the one constructing the thoughts, like in it?
Yeah.
I know that. Yep.
Yeah, you think you're constructing the thought and you would like to know how it is not to construct
Yes.
them. Tell us how you construct them.
Well, I know. I realise it appears that I'm constructed like it. I'm
Yes.
not really.
It only appears as if you're constructing them.
I'm not, but
So what's really happened? They show up.
Yes. So they appear to be constructed, and so yeah, whether or not they're showing up in reality doesn't matter, because I in that moment I feel like I'm constructing it. So
But you are aware of that feeling that you're constructing them.
not always. Sometimes
But right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It's only about right now.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you're going to be aware of tomorrow. Right now, it feels like you are constructing thinking, and you are aware that it feels like it. It feels convincing, doesn't it? It's brilliantly convincing, and you are aware of that, and that is the awareness.
only in this room. Once I leave, it's that.
Yeah.
You know what helped me, I think a little bit also, was just the pointer that I'm seeing, right? Seeing is happening. And in order for this seeing to occur, okay, what needs to happen is there's an adjusting of the rods and the cones in the eyes. I'm not sorry, I'm not doing that, okay? Now, there's no one doing that. It's just happening, okay? It's happening. Okay, I see, there's seeing happening, but there's no personal doing of that. Now, in order for a thought to occur, there needs to be a synaptic event. So these little tiny synapses in your brain that transmit neurotransmitters and all that stuff, and they move things around. The little tiny microscopic synapses are moving. Electrical impulses, they're moving. How did you do that? How do you make that happen if you think you're making the thoughts happen? And that's what has to happen in order for a thought to occur. So if you're just to help you out, like, I don't know, next time you think you're making the thoughts happen,
I'm that genius.
yeah, you're somehow like knowing how to make that's amazing. Tell me, I want to know how to do that, like, or make it not happen. Can you make a thought not happen? Like, can you just not one for the next 5 hours? Not one. It's going to happen whether you want it to or not. So maybe you never made it happen in the first place.
Yeah, that's helpful.
And if you look at the thoughts, I think it's not as if you ever choose that thought. You know, it's not there. Someone, I'm going to choose to think this now.
Yeah.
Like that just appears spontaneously. There's no process where, okay, I'm now going to choose to think this. And another pointer is, like, I think Bob says, why would you ever have bad thoughts if you were the chooser of them or the constructor of them?
Yeah.
That's good.
Good point, isn't it? Yeah.
And I like the other pointer, Bob, you're saying there literally can't be a thinker without thoughts.
Yeah.
So it implies that for there to be a thinker, there has to be thoughts, and thoughts aren't real, so the thinker isn't in there.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like, the thinker is beyond that. Not that there's a thinker, but I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, beautiful.
Yeah.
Thinking is occurring, and there might be a sense of I'm thinking this, and the languaging might still be happening as if I'm thinking that we should go and do blah blah blah, and the shift of awareness that knows the truth that that's actually, although that's the language, there's not an I. It's still there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking to somebody or seeing somebody, like, while you're listening to somebody, you haven't stopped seeing the rest of the people in the room, have you?
Yeah.
But when we isolate,
Oh, I love that.
Beautiful.
Very 2020 of you, Bob. There.
it becomes a problem. As I say, be utterly awake with the 5 senses wide open, where you're seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, thinking. All those 5 senses are there, and they're open right now, but we're focusing on the one and seemingly shut ourselves off from the others. So we're not fully living. We're living from that conceptual image, and the seeing, the hearing, the tasting, touching, the smelling, all the other things that are going on, though they're there, they're not being noticed. So we're focused into the one again, isolated into the one concept or idea that's happening to me, sort of thing. So it says, be utterly awake with the 5 senses wide open, and be utterly open with unfixated awareness, where you're not fixating on the one sensation to the exclusion of the other, but you're open to each one, because even as you're seeing right now, you're still hearing, you're still breathing, your heart's still beating, and you're not fully aware of them, but be open so that whatever comes up next you can flit into it instead of staying with the one to the exclusion of everything else, and then we're not living. We're living from behind the 8 ball. But if you're awake to all those things, so that that you can flit from one to the other without isolating, well, you're much more with life. Like when the clouds disappear in the sky, there's more clarity. When you're not fixating on the one thought to the exclusion of others, there's going to be more peace and joy, warmth there.
I have the comment which summarizes the same thing. It is from Tanya, and it's beautifully said. So the truth is there is only experiencing,
Yes.
and seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, hearing, thinking, but no experiencer or me. There is just this presence awareness appearing as everything. Anything thought says is not true, and is on the behalf of imaginary me, as experiencing doesn't comment. Separation, division is only in thought, but not in actuality, right? Hope you don't mind all the questions. That's from Tanya. Brilliant, Tanya. Beautiful. Thank you. And here Aldo is asking, what does the pointer, it shall not come nigh thy dwelling place, means?
Well, means that it won't touch you.
Yeah.
It can go on all around you, but it won't come near you.
That's right. And then, nothing, you're free from what you are, the space, the empty space, is never touched by anything. The body can be destroyed, the mind can be traumatized, but what you really are, the life, the energy, can never be destroyed. It can change form, but it can't be destroyed. Nothing touches it. The ways of expressions, the means of expressions, the aging of the body, getting blind or whatever, that can change. The way it comes out, filtered through that filtering mechanism. Yes, it will change, but the essence, the energy by itself doesn't. Just like the electricity coming through the toaster as the heat, and through the computer or television as the images, but the energy it doesn't change. Now Tanya also says, I'm mindful of the time and we going for lunch, whoever wants to join. Tanya says, there is no thinker, but thoughts still appear. But yes, thoughts seem to be about the body and imaginary character. And now Chris is just enjoying, okay, and Caroline, God, Ram, Nazar, Heyman, God. Yes, and it is surprising how the identification and attachments are so heavy energy done by them. Isn't it amazing? How convincing. What a brilliant appearance. What a magnificent illusion. How the mind gets full. Yes, you're right, God. Yeah, it does really. No choice to escape suffering. Rox says, isolate. That's a cracker, Bob. Which can't be isolated, Amarnath says. And Richard, if I have a problem, thoughts will tend to concentrate, isolate and focus around this. And thus, isolate. Brilliant. Bob cracking jokes like this and people laughing. Yes, he is so sharp and so quick. And we are at the end of the comments, and if anyone wants to join us, we could continue in the cafe nearby. If people have cars who don't have cars, we can arrange who goes with who. And you still happy to go? You were happy to go?
Okay.
Wonderful. Yeah. So thank you everyone.
Yes.
If
Thanks.
any burning questions were unanswered, we can continue.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Each and every one of you know all about it anyway.
Yes.
That's
Yes,
good.
everyone was a baby once, without the narrative self constructed. So we all, this is the true nature. Off we go.
So, yes.